Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Career Network Ministry. It's good to have you all here tonight. And it's so wonderful you're all so trained so well. Everybody starts to quiet down, focus in on who's up at the front of the room. It's that idiot Mallowan again up there at the front. Okay, welcome everybody. We're happy to have you here. We've got a great speaker tonight. We've got some announcements, some job openings we want to let you know about. But before we get into that, Edia is our normal, wonderful person that leads us in prayer. Is actually, I think she's at Booz Allen tonight doing a Toastmasters presentation. I think she's in some kind of competition. So we're praying for her success. So we have a great stand-in. Will Stanfield's going to open us up in prayer. Will?
Well, let's stand on, oh God. Dear Heavenly Father, we come to you this evening. We thank you so much for all of the help and all of the trainers and all the different people who are giving and the assistance and the support that we have here. And Father, for the speaker, we pray that you bless her tonight, that she can speak words of wisdom over us to help us get back into the game. It's in Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Will. All right, so some announcements to get us started, and then we'll do a fun thing that I like to do. First off, it is always wonderful when we have alum of CNM or people that find out about us through word of mouth as being a great organization with people that are wonderfully talented, right? That's all of you in this room, right? Wonderfully talented that have job openings. And unfortunately, both gentlemen that were here tonight to share some job openings actually wanted to give the announcement, but then they got pulled away. So actually, one or both of them may be back. But here's what we tell people when, and maybe this will fit with you. We certainly hope this will be the situation for you. Is that when you land a position and you're now gainfully employed and you're at that new employer, and there's an opportunity at your organization that you're willing to help be the facilitator of any resumes that might come in. What we do is as you know, we don't have our own job board per se. There are plenty of job boards out there, but people that are willing to be the recipient of a resume from an applicant from CNM in an organization, and we'll take that to a hiring manager, the HR person. We'd love to have you come back and let us know about those things and be the conduit to be an internal referral for the people that are sitting in this room. So we appreciate when our alumni do that, or just people that either know the church, know of our program, bring back opportunities to share with you. So let me give you a heads up. Both of these gentlemen have promised to post these positions in our LinkedIn group. So those of you that are new to us, please make sure you join our LinkedIn group, because they'll go into the discussion section, not where they have to pay for job postings, and they will post that they have an opening. Here's how you can reach them, and that's what we ask them to do when they come to us. So let me tell you the two organizations. One is Metasolve. The gentleman's name is Donald Goldberg. It's a healthcare tech firm. They're looking for someone with marketing skills and also sales. So keep your eyes open for that. Again, it's Metasolve, Donald Goldberg. And then also Alberto, oh my gosh, I'm not going to be able to pronounce his last name. Lugiasman. I'm a far cry from that proper pronunciation. The bottom line is it's Attorney Negotiation Center, and he has positions for sales, marketing, and also attorneys. So keep your eyes open for the CNM discussion group for those openings, okay? All right. Now, here's something we haven't done, I don't think we did last week because we were a little short on time. So those of you, we always like to celebrate intermediary success. It would always be wonderful if everybody was coming in and celebrating their new job, but we don't always start off that way, right? We got to go through the interview process and phone screening. So let's celebrate some successes here. Those of you that have had an in-person interview over the last week, would you please stand up and let's give you a round of applause. Great. So stay standing. We're going to add to your ranks, so congratulations. Those of you that have actually had a phone interview over the past week, would you please stand up so we can give you a round of applause? In fact, stay standing, if you will. We're going to add to your ranks. Those of you in the room that have reached out to someone through some kind of networking function and have maybe added someone to your inner circle or through LinkedIn that you think that's going to be able to help you with your job search, would you please stand up and let's give you a round of applause. And then what do we say to the people that are still sitting? Get to work, right? All right, so now we don't want to pick on you too much. You may not know any better, that's why you're here. Now the other group that we really want to acknowledge, because when I think back to when I first got involved with CNM like 5 years ago, we'd have maybe 70 people in this room. Maybe we'd have one breakout. Now we have, I don't know how many different rooms with breakout sessions. So when someone's coming in new, of course then they meet people like our Wills up at the registration desk with balloons and hats and leis and all this crazy stuff we do at the registration desk. It can be a little intimidating when you're a first timer. So with those of you that have the famous red borders around your name tag, that lets us know you're a first timer. Would you please stand up and let's give you a round of applause for braving the people time. And as I jokingly said, don't come back. No, please, we want you back, and we hope you'll stay with us, because there's lots of value that we give here to you each night. And again, a lot of that value really comes from supporting each other. So, but here's the best part of the evening. The best part of the evening is whenever we have someone who actually has landed. When we say they've landed, we give them an opportunity to do a victory lap. Now, we've had some people do a victory lap that literally put on their running shorts and run around the room. You don't have to do that. So Mark's actually in his professional attire tonight, so we're not going to have him do laps. But Mark, would you please come up and share your victory lap with us? There you go.
Good evening, everyone. Okay, I'm supposed to keep this to 5 minutes and tell you how I got my present job that... Oh, I am speaking up. It's got a little switch he's got to move. All right. My adventures in unemployment began on May 13th of last year on my 7th wedding anniversary. I was fired for something that was not my fault. Very quickly, I knew a problem would occur. I went to my boss to find out what I could do to stop it. She told me there was nothing we could do to stop it. The problem happened. Her boss said that I should have known to come to him to get it stopped. So he let me go. That's how it started. So immediately, I went to a Risk Management Society of the Potomac meeting. That was a couple days later. I networked there. I had arranged to meet with someone that I met there. He didn't really have a job for me. I went into the mode of networking with as many people as I could that were already in my LinkedIn list. My church has a ultimate frisbee team. I used to play a decade ago, so I agreed to coach. And when I coached, I handed out my card and my resume to my own teammates. But when we went to a game, I handed it out to the opposing team because it was the corporate league, and we would play against Accenture, Miter, I don't know if Booz Allen, you guys know who I'm talking about. I would hand out my resume to those folks. Still nothing. It took me 2 or 3 months just to get my first interview. When I had my first interview, I was a little rusty. Even though I did go to the interview table to get a little brief instruction on, hey, what should I stay away from, what should I do, even though I knew it because I've been volunteering here for about 2 years now. I thought I did well at the interview. That guy never called me, ever, not even interviewed. I have no idea if he's still alive. That was my first interview. I had a second interview within a week after the first one. Those folks didn't call me back. I had a third interview. I don't remember with who. I think that's pretty sad. And I don't think I heard from them either. I don't know what it was. So then there was this job that was posted on Monster, I believe it was. And I applied, and the phone screener called me, and she pretty much was telling me that I didn't have enough experience. And I was going crazy. I was like, what? This is perfect for me. Are you kidding me? And after I got to explain my resume, she was like, okay, well, we'll call you in. Well, I had my first interview with the head of the department. His name was Charlie. And he said, okay, why don't you come in with the number 2 guy? I said, okay. I go to see the number 2 guy. About 15 minutes in, he says, you know, I really like you, but we don't have a job for you. We just want to keep you in the pipeline in case there's an open position. So, okay. It was, when I met with the number 1 guy, on paper, it was the perfect job for me because I have an insurance background and I want to go into risk management. This job, they needed people with insurance backgrounds, and it would be my stepping stone into risk management. It's a career transition, which is kind of tough now, and it's kind of tough when you don't have any experience in the position you want to get into. Even though I had a risk management designation, which I later found out doesn't mean anything to anybody. You know, I'll talk about that some other time. So more time went on, and I ran out of benefits from unemployment benefits. I managed to take a job at Wells Fargo. I was kind of overqualified for the position I was in. I was making probably about half of what I had been making at my previous position. I did have I went to a job fair. I was able to schmooze with the guy, and he said, hey, why don't we call you in for an interview? And they kept asking me questions about my last job that I'd been fired from. And if you go to the interviewing table, they'll tell you there's 2 things you should or shouldn't do. One is you should never disparage your previous employer. But they want you to be honest and open too. So one of those has to give. And this company kept asking me about my last position. And I obviously did not get the job there. But a week later, I found that one of our volunteers, Dwayne, got a job there. I was not jealous. He was a different position. So in December, the job that I have now, the person that I told you, or the company that I told you, they said, well, we don't have a job for you. They said, okay, we have a job for you. Why don't you apply? I applied, and I went through a bunch of interviews. Every interview they had me do, they said, okay, well, create a spreadsheet for us. Okay, I did that. They came in another time, okay, take a test. All right, I took that test. So after a few weeks, they finally offered me a job, but the salary was not where I wanted to be. And the day before, I had been in all-day interviews with a prominent company in DC, and I really wanted that position. So I asked the guy, I said, can you give me 3 days? Can you give me, they offered the job on Friday, can you give me until Wednesday to make a decision? And I could tell he was hesitant, but he did offer me the job. So I was like, well, he can wait 3 days. I mean, And I spoke with some people here, and they said, it's typical that you give about a week, before you give your decision. Well, on Monday, he retracted. So I was devastated. That was really a low point. I'd been unemployed and underemployed for a long time by then. So when he retracted, he said, yeah, we'll keep your resume on file. And you can imagine what I was thinking. You can take my resume and tell you where you're going to put it. But I never sent him a response at all. Well, I had been praying for the perfect job for a while. And about a month or two later, speaking of which, this company that I'm employed now, the same one that retracted, the same one that I went to a second interview with, and they said they didn't have a job for me. The number one guy's cousin sat right next to me in this very room. Wow. So I was like, well, I think I got an in with him now. And I sent all sorts of emails prior to the December offer, to have them stay and to have them keep me in their brains. Anyway, I'd been praying, and about in March sometime they said, okay, we have another position for you. Through LinkedIn, I linked in with some other people that actually worked there, and there were starting to be concerns about my coworkers, and a lot of people were leaving. Well, I was able to turn that and the fact that they retracted into an increase in salary, basically. So when they reoffered, I told the number 2 and number 3 person that number 1 had to increase his offer. I didn't say why, I just said he had to. He did, I accepted, and I've been there for 8 days now, and I don't really see any personality problems, and I'm very happy to have the job that I have.
Congratulations. Now, of course, what Mark didn't share with you when he said he was handing out all those resumes during Ultimate Frisbee is the reason why it took him so long is he stinks at Ultimate Frisbee. And we all said, we don't want him in the organization. So they can come back to haunt you when you do that kind of stuff, Mark. Well, okay. Well, we have waiting in the wings Pascale Haspil, who has been talking about, when you hear people say about hiring for character and competence, first off, a ton of competence, but Pascale, I'm trying to think how you first came to us and you gave a presentation on resume review or something like that, and then she was so gracious to really step it up. She only works probably 60, 70 hours a week for all I know, given what she does. But first of every month now she does a resume review workshop, has been serving hundreds, if not thousands of you every year in terms of her volunteerism. And actually, I just learned from Pascale tonight. First off, she has been the Vice President of Professional Services at Lee Hecht Harrison. So if you don't know what Lee Hecht Harrison is an organization that large companies will spend lots of money to help, when they do a reduction in force, to help their senior people hopefully land into their next opportunity. And I know Lee Hecht does more than just that, but that's sort of Pascale can tell you more about what Lee Hecht does. But, so here's the interesting thing. We actually should have Pascale do a victory lap herself. She was just telling me that she used to work for Capital One before she got involved with Lee Hecht Harrison. And now what's happened is she has become the head of career development within Capital One, heading up the program, overseeing 15 coaches around the country in 4 different locations. So do you think we got enough of a quality speaker for you tonight? If not, you're all fired, and we'll just have fun together. I'll take Pascale out for dinner, and the heck with you. But she's awesome. We're so privileged to have her here. Pascale, please come on up and take the stage.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Excellent. There there are some of you that are standing up. I don't know if you want to sit down, make yourselves comfortable. We're going to have a nice conversation, if you will. And Mal was introduced, well, I should take a step back. The reason why I came to McLean Bible and Career Network Ministry is because of Stuart Itkin. And I know some of you in this room know Stuart. And Stuart was actually my client at Lehigh Harrison, and I was coaching him through a variety of different things. He was attending the networking teams, and he says, you know, I've been going to this networking group, and I really think that you should just come and meet the people there. He says, specifically, Bob Korzeniowski. You have to meet Bob. You gotta have coffee with Bob. You just gotta know Bob, 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 Bob. So I hear all this stuff about Bob. We reach out to Bob, we get introduced via email. I meet him at Panera Bread. 5 minutes later, or 5 minutes into the conversation, he's like, so when are you coming to speak? And I was like, really? Already? All right, no problem. And that's how I ended up here. And that's how I continued to grow as a volunteer here at this organization, because there's always fabulous things to do here for Career Network Ministry. And a lot of the candidates that we serve at Lehigh Harrison, particularly if their program or services run out, we've always, my entire staff out of DC, Baltimore, Vienna, etc., even those from the Richmond office, we always encourage them, come to this event to continue your progress, your productivity, your network, expand your knowledge and skills, etc. So that is essentially how I've become connected with this group. I love being here, and I'm very, very grateful for the opportunity to come back and to speak with you guys again. My role, to clarify what I do, I am VP, Director of Professional Services for Lehigh Harrison, but I am actually contracted to Capital One. And I worked for Capital One for 8 years, my 7-year anniversary with LHH is actually going to be in October. And they have something called Career Development Centers that are staffed and operated by Lehigh Harrison, but physically on site at Capital One. And they have a philosophy, enterprise-wide, that believes that let's invest in the career development of our people, round the clock, year-round. And we hope that in investing in those individuals, that we will prevent attrition issues, that we will show our associates that they are valued, right? So in the career development centers, if you just became a people manager, but you're not secure in being a people manager, you want to know how to grow that skill set, you can sign up with an LHH coach on site, and Capital One pays for it. If you get a bad performance review, and they identified some areas of opportunity that you need, go to the Career Development Center, sign up with a coach, figure out what you need to do. Same thing if you're trying to make a transition into another line of business. Sign up with a coach, figure it out, but take ownership and accountability for your development. We're giving you the tools, we're giving you the resources. So I actually manage that initiative for Capital One. I've been doing it for 7 months now. I've got approximately 15 coaches that work on site at different locations as well as off site. And it's been an incredible experience, and I've been learning a lot about the career development aspects of talent management versus the transition side, which is where I was focused before. So my inspiration for the personal branding has actually come from the fact that I just launched personal branding as a 2-hour workshop at Capital One. And within the first month of launching it, we got approximately 15 requests that week for lines of businesses who said, come do this for my entire department. Wow. Right? And corporations, you're going to find that personal branding is going to be a trend for 2014. This is not the last time that you're going to hear it. How do you help individual contributors, managers, performers at your organization connect to the enterprise mission? But how do you help and empower your associates to take accountability for who they are and be able to navigate their careers at your organization, right? Because the ownership does lie with you. And that's where personal branding really comes from. So I'm going to be sharing some insights with you, and I do hope that it gives you techniques and methodologies and an alternative way for you to look at your job search, and or for those of you that are working, employed, or in the process of contemplating a transition, here's an alternative way of looking at that so that you're successful, okay? Any questions about that so far before we get started? We're good? You're processing, that's okay. So, I am highly open to engagement and questions. If you've got a burning question, please raise your hand. I would like for this to be as much of an interactive dialogue as possible. I've got some interesting questions and exercises that are set up for you. So we're going to talk about that.
Just need something from you.
Yes, of course. No, it's okay. Take your time. All right. So when I go to the movies, I'm going to start with something a little bit personal. And I'm bored to tears, right? I think it's a great movie. I get in and I'm realizing, oh my God, what a train wreck. My immediate attention goes to, how many brands can I recognize in the movie? It is a fabulous exercise, and I tell you, the next time you go to the movies, start doing that, and you'll realize you're not even paying attention to the storyline, you're actually paying attention to the brands. So when I go to like Iron Man, the thing that popped in my head was that Audi was in every single action scene. I'm like, really, Audi? You make a car that does that? I can't believe it, right? And so my brother and I kind of started competing when we went to the movies, when we got really, really bored, and I would call out a brand name. I'm like, Motorola, Audi, did you see that? The cereal, the credit card. And it became an activity. Now, nationally, I don't know if you guys recognize this, but nationally we do this in what event? Thank you. That's right, the Super Bowl. Now, even when our teams don't make it to the Super Bowl, why do we watch? That's right. And then what happens the following day when you go to work at the water cooler? That's right. You're talking about the brand. Forget the team, right? Particularly this past Super Bowl, snooze fest, right? But I won't go there. It's another story, right? But you go and you start talking about the brands. And then you start talking about, you know, I really didn't know that they made that product. That was really interesting. Or it could have been a commercial that was like, what? I don't get it. What did that have to do with this, right? There's the disconnect. Or it could have been that you saw that commercial, you didn't know what it was about, but it made you feel so good, and you walked away with that feeling. And that's what branding is about. So before I take you into how this applies to you guys personally, at everybody's table, you have a clear envelope, and inside is a brand. And I want you to take 5 minutes as a group to answer the questions that are on there. Okay? There's a whole series of brands that are on there. And after the 5 minutes, I'm actually going to ask you to dissect it, right? I want you to tell me as quickly as possible, what are the top 3 strengths of that brand? What is the value proposition of this brand? What is it going to do for you? Or if you've interacted with it, what has it done for you? What's the reputation look like? And do you have a tagline or a slogan? And I will accept slogans from the 80s, the 90s, and the 70s if you remember. All right? 5 minutes. First 5 minutes of interacting with a brand, meeting someone, you know what you want. You know how you're going to feel, right? You walk into a car dealership, you'll immediately react to what it is that you're seeing and what appeals to you, what doesn't appeal to you. And so sometimes when we are representing our brand, we may not necessarily have the luxury of time to make a good first impression. So we have to think thoughtfully before we start interacting with the world, interacting with our network, in our workplace when we're first starting a new job. We have to stop and we have to think about what is our personal brand? What is that first impression that we want to give, right? So I want to hear a little bit about what you guys came up with. So who had Apple?
Oh, that would be
Woo! Fabulous. So who's going to present?
want me to present? Okay.
Yes. Let's get you a microphone first so that everybody can hear you. And I'd like to hear the perspective of what you guys came up with. All right? Fabulous.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, here we go. For Apple,
Our top strengths and services were innovative, as represented by the iPad, the iPhone, the other iPod, yes. And customer service was another top strength. And then high quality. And we couldn't decide on just 3. We had to add one more: popularity and accessibility of all of the products that they make. Value proposition: what can this brand do for you? Well, we felt that it offered better technology than Microsoft. Sorry.
I knew that was going to happen.
If you buy stock in Apple, then you're in the money.
Not better than XP.
And it makes you part of the in crowd. So the reputation, does this brand have a solid reputation? Obviously, yes. How does it affect you as a consumer? It makes you feel superior than everybody else. And your slogan is, you think different.
Yes.
Yeah, is that
You
right?
got it.
Awesome.
Spot on.
So,
Thank you. I hope this mic doesn't interfere with my mic. Fabulous. So, who had Walmart? Let's move to a vendor. Who had Walmart? Fantastic. Who would like to present for us? Fabulous. Thank you.
The top strengths were it's a low-cost leader and they sell everything. The value proposition is you can buy it cheaper. It has a really great returns policy, and again, you can save money. And the reputation, does it have a solid reputation? Yes. Unfortunately, when it says how does it affect you as a consumer, it drives me away. But everybody here at our table said we will at least go there for specific purchases. We may not drive out of our way to go to Walmart. We couldn't think of a slogan or tagline, but someone said there's a smiley face with a new lower cost something.
There is a smiley face. As a matter of fact, I keep getting it mixed up, but I wrote it down.
That's all we had about
Because
Walmart.
Walmart is not a brand that I remember, quite frankly. Save money, live better. Yeah. See? Memorable, but not so memorable. Yeah? Fantastic. Thank you for doing that. So, we've talked about a product, we've talked about a vendor. Let's look at a combo. Who had Martha Stewart?
Jail time.
Back there? Fabulous. Because Martha Stewart is equally a brand as she is a person, right? So I think it would be interesting to hear this group's perspective.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
So for Martha Stewart, we said top strength and services, baking and cooking, home decorating, and crafts. Value proposition, save money, save time, and affordable products. Reputation, the table thought yes, she has, or the brand has a solid reputation. But as we talked, there was a lot of mixed opinions about Martha Stewart. Some were very good, but there were a lot of jokes and memories of the prison sentence.
Yes.
And we could not at all come up with a slogan or tagline.
Because hers is not memorable to me either. Life made easier. Life made easier is Martha Stewart, right? Now, I put her up there intentionally because I'm going to prove a point about the mixed emotions and the mixed feelings, right? With the person, the brand, what they can do, performance, etc. But when I think Martha Stewart, I think simplicity. There is just something about her products and even her recipes that are so easy to follow. They're not complex, they're relatively affordable, they're somewhat easy to do, I can aspire to do them, and that's what stands out in my mind even more so than that quote-unquote scandalous past. So, let's move to something Lance Armstrong. Who had Lance? Who, bless your soul, had Lance? Fabulous.
So we have Lance Armstrong, and for top strength of services, first one's endurance. It's a racer, so sleep. And third, sporting gear, vision wear.
Oh, team effort. I love it.
It's a team effort.
what can this brand do for you? We saw the pictures here. It looks like he's selling clothing. We recognized that the title said it was a charity, so we thought that would be a charity there. We did remember that he is a survivor.
Look at y'all, taking the high road.
Yeah, that's a little part. Reputation? No, good. No, his reputation is tarnished because of the
Oprah.
That's right.
hormone steroid use. It's nice, but it's not for us.
Right.
Bonus question: slogan, tagline, famous quotes. Live strong.
That's right.
And then for Nike, just do it.
There you go. Fantastic. Thank you for that. Now, I'm picking these examples for a reason. There's a method to my madness, right? And the thing about Lance is, I so admire his athletic ability. Chemicals, drugs, whatever, it doesn't matter. He still had to get to that point before he started taking those things, right? And I do think of him as a survivor. And maybe that's the humanitarian side of me that's remembering that. And so, based on our interests, our personalities, our values, our background, our experience, we may be perceiving the brand in different ways. So half of us here are walking away with scandal and a tarnished reputation, and the other half of us is still remembering he was a survivor. He has endurance. He is still an athlete. It's regrettable that he chose the path that he chose, if indeed somebody can validate that it was all true, right? We're not here to dispute that. So, let's complicate things. Who had The Godfather?
So, so we had Marlon Brando. It's all about context, right? So we didn't know.
The Godfather. Focus on The Godfather.
So, okay, so The Godfather.
Thank you.
Marlon Brando. So, award-winning actor, right? So, the context was, what we talking about, Marlon Brando or The Godfather, right? So, the strengths, but an Academy Award-winning actor, an authority figure certainly, in Don Corleone, but family loyalty, not necessarily family values, but family loyalty.
I like where you're going with that.
The value proposition is he can provide security to help because he has that loyalty. The reputation, does this brand have a solid reputation? He said yes, but how does it affect you as a consumer? This demands respect, you got the authority figure, fear, and it would help you promoting possibly olive oil, maybe not family values. And a bonus question, I'll make you an offer you can't refuse.
Thank you.
Wow.
You guys are so smart because you're picking up on the things I wanted you to pick up on when I put those examples in there. And it's funny because we don't think of people or characters in the movies as a brand, but in actuality they do. Because you still can buy those posters and the gear and the, Blu-ray DVD sets of The Godfather, etc. Now, all kidding aside, whether or not The Godfather was ethical or unethical in his practices, on the day of his daughter's wedding, you're getting what you want. He's not going to deny you that. He follows through on his commitment to you. He doesn't go beyond what he's comfortable doing. Again, ethical or unethical, right? So I think it's amazing to kind of look at him as a character. And I also recognize The Godfather as a fabulous networker. Right? Did you ever stop and think that he's an amazing networker? This man can pull a resource from anywhere, cross-country, and make things happen. He can make phone calls in Italy while he's still sitting in New York. Right? And he knows how to connect resources together. So I am now going to introduce the final case study, the godfather of networking. Bob. Who had Bob? Fabulous. I had to spice things up a little bit, eh? Our fearless leader.
Top strengths and services. Number one, a servant leader, outgoing personality and helpful, and one-on-one counseling is very good. Value proposition, what can this brand do for you? Find a job. Development and executing on advice. Connecting, oh, he had good connectivity on LinkedIn and networking. Reputation, what does this brand have a solid reputation? Yes. How does it affect you as a consumer? He keeps us coming. There's some dependability there, and loyalty. And the bonus question, slogan, person to know.
Person to know. Interesting. Thank you. That was an excellent presentation. My slogan for Bob is, let's get you from the resume game into the networking game. And if you research him, and you research some of the articles on him, it is a consistent theme, right? Regardless of the article, the interview, whether you've been interacting with him one-on-one, etc. And I pull him as an example, because not only is it important to lead by example, but the point that I want to drive here is he is the only brand that we've talked about where the brand, the reputation, the network, the performance, all three things were in alignment, and we were in 100% consensus on this brand. Right? Now, I want you to now start thinking about yourselves. Is performance enough today to get you the job? Why not?
It's all on paper for some people, and you may not be able to relate that over a piece of paper.
Okay. So what the gentleman here said is, performance is on paper, right? But it may not necessarily be something that you can demonstrate or get a feel for or anything along those lines. The fact of the matter is that performance alone will not get you the job or will not move you forward. What if you have a poor reputation or a tarnished reputation, like in the example of Lance Armstrong? Does that overshadow your performance? And potentially prevents you from moving forward, progressing, or landing the opportunity, right? Now, the same is to be held true for reputation. You can have an amazing reputation, but if you're so obsessed with your reputation that you're not following through on your commitments or details or things that you commit to doing, what then happens to your reputation? It goes down, right? So, there's a formula behind this, right? And when we're going to talk about personal brand, we're going to talk about all of these different outcomes. Your reputation, how you put your performance together. I'm going to give you a formula and a framework for that so that you understand how this impacts you, again, as a job seeker looking to land an opportunity. And more importantly, for those of you that are currently employed or entertaining a transition, this is a great opportunity for understanding how to navigate your way through an organization, particularly a hierarchical, organization that's very complex, very large, right? So the formula that we look at is the capability formula. Your reputation multiplied by your performance, multiplied by your network, is what will help you achieve your career goals, right? Progression, advancement, landing, whatever category you are in right now as an audience, that's what's going to take you to the next level. In today's environment, it is not enough for you to focus on your performance. If you're in a small organization, yes, if you're a high performer, it's going to stand out. If you're in a smaller company that's relatively level, you're going to stand out in terms of performance. 10 years ago, the job market from 10 years ago, you could be an exceptional performer and it was going to stand out. We're in a different market today. It's highly competitive. There's lots of people who are high performers, who have degrees, who have credentials. We are a highly educated area, particularly the Washington metro area. So what are you going to do to stand out? So some of you may have the performance locked down, but maybe you have some area of opportunity as far as expanding your network a little bit more to put your brand out a little bit more, which would then put your performance into the spotlight and then help you connect to the opportunities that you're looking for, okay? So my intention is let's do a little bit of an analysis of each of these things, and I'm going to validate, are you doing the right things that you need to do to achieve this equation? So far, so good? Any questions? All right. Now, let's define advancement, because advancement can mean different things to different people. It doesn't mean that you have to move all the time vertically and climb up a ladder. Some of us don't aspire to do that. Some of us aspire to be in an environment that rewards us for our performance, that gives us the opportunity to grow, to learn, and of course, we do have to make a living, so that's an added bonus, right? So when you think about your brand and how you position your brand, what are some of the things that you need to do? Sometimes we have to make a lateral move just to position our brand a little bit better. Maybe that gives us a foot in the door for an environment that we were trying to move into. We get that experience and it allows us to move forward. Sometimes our area is saturated with a particular job family. It may not be easy to break into, and sometimes relocation is the answer to that, right? Other times, we're just looking for general exploration, an opportunity to take our skill sets in a variety of different directions to where we can analyze what really works for us and then bring it back to what we would like to be doing going forward. So I'm highlighting these different graphics for you so that you can ask yourselves, what does advancement look like for you? Because even if you're looking to land a job, is there a goal behind where you're trying to land? Okay? Now, there is a methodology to analyzing and putting your brand together. And I sum it up in the form of the 5 Ps. Who are you as a person? If you haven't even stopped to self-assess yourself yet, you're not going to be able to do things like networking, put a resume together, etc. So it's really, really important that you do some form of self-assessment to understand what are your unique strengths and abilities. Now, if I give you an example, I'll give you the example of languages. Who here is bilingual? Fabulous, right? Now, have you ever stopped to think about how having knowledge of another language makes you more competitive in the marketplace? What are some examples of how you could be more competitive because you know another language? Don't be shy. Yes?
You could assist people of another, who speak another language
In terms of customer services and
Yeah.
things like that? So she's highlighting that you could potentially be a translator. You could help customers that may not know something, right? And translate. What are some other examples? Yes?
Yeah, if you don't know the language, there's a good possibility you also won't know the culture.
Familiarity with another culture could be the potential for knowing another language. That's an excellent example. So you want to give one? Yeah.
A very practical one. A lot of call centers hire people that speak different languages.
That is correct, right? Now, we may not know, or did you have one you wanted to add?
Actually, if you have a product that you're trying to sell internationally, how you place that product in the market may make a difference.
You nailed it, right there. Positioning of a product in another marketplace, right? We have a lot of national companies that are trying to go global, and there is a need, for example, for people that have multicultural skill sets, language skill sets, right? How can you take your expertise, use it in another language, build that relationship? You could potentially be that conduit for helping your company place their product in another marketplace, right? Or in the example of working in the call centers, you're actually opening up your company's services to a target market that could have been not attracted because of the language barrier. There's competitive advantage there. There's money that is a result of that. And then you strengthen the company's brand, but in turn, your performance has strengthened as well, and your brand value has gone up. This is what I mean by identifying unique things about you. Don't think of, oh, maybe it's because I look like this, or I do this, or I do that. When we say unique, think about what it does for the employer the same way that we analyze some of the brands, right? Same thing with your performance, your capabilities. What are you able to offer? Skills, expertise, competence. When we talk about place, I don't think a lot of people stop and think about this. Are you in an environment, or are you targeting an environment that is in alignment with your values, your interests, and your personality? Because if you're not happy somewhere, it could potentially affect your brand. It could affect your performance. It could affect how you build relationships, right? So are you analyzing that? Possibilities. When we say SMART goals, I'm going to dissect that for you momentarily. But it's about adopting a framework for setting goals. Before you pick up the phone, what are you trying to achieve? Before you send an email, what is the purpose? What is the intent? What is the tonality behind that? It's being strategic and thoughtful about your actions, because your actions are a reflection of you, which is part of your brand. Right? Now, when we talk about planning, this is about execution. Right? You can do all the planning in the world, but if you don't execute and you don't follow through, again, it's very, very important that you follow through on your commitments. So far, so good? Excellent. I'm connecting the dots for you. But think of the 5 Ps, and where are there areas of opportunity for you to strengthen one of these? Okay? Now, when you take the 5 Ps and you put them together, now you start to ask yourself these questions. Give definition to your strengths and your abilities. Okay? Get clear on how you're different. Right? Outline the unique values you offer the employer. Right? I'll give you the example of Home Depot, because that's one that stands out for me more than Lowe's, believe it or not. Home Depot is going to empower me to do projects for myself. I'm going to save money because I don't have to hire some contractor who's going to go after my money and make me spend more, etc. I'm going to get expert advice from the people on staff, and I'm going to enjoy the result. That's the Home Depot brand, right there. That's their identity. Now I want you guys to adopt that same mindset for yourself. What is your professional identity? What is trending? What do you know about yourselves and what you bring to the table that's valuable? Okay? When you take all of that information, the self-assessments, the environment you're looking for, let's translate that and let's develop your value proposition, right? You have a core understanding of what you want your brand to be. Let's develop a value proposition around that. This is an exercise that my colleague in New York actually designed. It's a value proposition exercise. You create a tic-tac-toe chart, and you put yourself at the center. Who are you as a professional? In this example, it's an HR professional. All right? And the boxes around represent their value proposition. The first one is around the bilingual skills and the negotiation skills, right? If you're going to say that communication is a strength, you got to be more specific about why. It's not enough to say that you're an effective communicator. I need to know why and how I can leverage that within my organization to do what I need to do better. Their presentation skills, that was value proposition number 2. When it comes to presentation skills, you also need to highlight why that is a unique differentiator for you. In the case of this person, it was the audience that they were presenting to. Right? And that gives me a sense of their skill sets, their value prop. When recruitment is an area of expertise for them, right? But recruitment is a big topic. There's a lot of things involved with recruitment. And what they chose to be recognized for is they highlighted full life cycle recruitment, which means they are a soup to nuts recruiter. They can be a one-man team if you need them to be, which as an employer, that's great, because if I'm just getting started and I don't have a lot of funds, I know that they can handle the whole process. And then they also talked about LinkedIn and social media sourcing. A lot of recruiters haven't yet mastered that skill set of how to source effectively off of social media sites without judgment, I might add, right? So that's an area of expertise for this person. Now they have expertise in benefits, they have expertise in talent development, and look at value prop 6. It's not just about education, it's also about your credentials. There are certain job families now where there is a high premium and a high value for some of the certificate programs that are out there. And some of those certificate programs are actually valued more than the degree in some cases, right? Particularly in the area of technology, HR, analysts, etc. So think about that. What sort of a certificate program or credentials do you have that are part of your value proposition? They have some knowledge and background in compensation, not an area of expertise, just general knowledge. And then they close out with their civic activities. If you're a recruiter, it's good for me to know that you have relationships throughout the community, so that if you're going to create targeted events, strategic events, I know that I can use that to my advantage as a prospective employer, right? This is this person's value proposition. Very simple exercise, right? Now, what we're going to do is we're going to take the value proposition and we're going to translate it into a brand statement. Your 30-second elevator pitch, your positioning statement for those of you that have worked at Lee Hecht Harrison, that question that you get in an interview, tell me more about yourself, all right? You don't tell them I have a dog, a cat, chicken, and things, right? You give them your 30-second elevator pitch. How are you introducing yourself? So this individual on the left-hand side pulled the strengths from his value proposition and just fused it into a very simple statement. Highly motivated, experienced IT professional in visualizing, developing, and leading website development in marketing and e-commerce. Leverage connections with diverse project teams to create dynamic external and internal web presence. I consistently focus on relationship building to drive project management results. It's fantastic, right? And I can already think of 10 interview questions that I could potentially ask him just off of his 30-second elevator pitch, right? There's nothing glamorous, there's no fancy words, just presenting who he is and what he brings to the table and how he adds value. Does that make sense so far? Any questions? All right. Yes, please. So the gentleman's question is, would you have more than one elevator pitch contingent on different levels that you're interacting with?
Yeah, like the audience of whoever you're speaking to, your skills and strengths are really technical, and you might come off like you're, that they might come away with, I don't understand what he said.
Ah, that's a great question. That's a good example.
And depending on who you said it to.
Yes.
it's
Okay.
the right person.
Absolutely. So the thing with an elevator pitch is you always have to be very cognizant of who your target audience is and you're interacting with, right? So if I'm a technical professional and I'm networking with the administrative professional who's going to connect me to a hiring manager for IT, I may not spew out all the software and OS environments that I know of at her, but I may position myself a little bit differently. So yes, my 30-second elevator pitch to her might sound very different than the one I would give to the actual hiring manager who has subject matter expertise in your field, right? I think the key with an elevator pitch is you always have to assess the environment that you're in, right? If you're at a dinner table networking versus a networking event or doing speed networking or having a phone call, each of those is going to require a different kind of networking pitch. You might have to say more, you might have to scale back and say less, but you have to pick and choose the timing of how you're introducing yourself. Does that make sense? It's an excellent question. All right, so now, how are you marketing this brand? You've got your value proposition. You know what your differentiators are, all right? You've got your 30-second elevator pitch, which is the core theme of who you are as a professional. How are you now marketing this information? Because you're going to use the brand statement, the value prop, the resume, your LinkedIn, your networking, your interviewing. The most important thing you have to remember is whatever brand you choose, it has to be consistent. I can't go on your LinkedIn page and say something completely different than what you told me in an elevator pitch. There has to be consistency. When there is not consistency, it is a reflection or a red flag or a question mark. You could send mixed signals, right? So let's take a look at each of these very quickly. First piece of your brand strategy, in terms of how you're marketing yourself, is around your accomplishment stories, your SOAR stories. I know that we talk about SOAR stories here at McLean Marble, right? Or it could be STAR, situation, task, action, result, situation, obstacle, action, result, right? Your accomplishment stories, bless you. If you haven't collected your SOAR stories, that is your homework assignment when you leave here today. Because when you're interacting with someone, how do you build relationships? Storytelling, right? We remember stories. So sometimes you can take those accomplishment stories and you can slide them into a casual conversation. Really? You were having an issue with that? I experienced something similar at my organization, but here's what we did to do that. Oh, tell me more. How did you achieve that result? It's how you kind of break down barriers and interact and build relationships. So it's really important that you stop and you think about, how do you make a difference? What are your stories of how you made a difference in your previous roles or in your current role? How is your performance measured? Do you have stories around how your performance was measured that demonstrates that value? Right? And if you have a success binder or portfolio, awards, performance reviews, go back into that material and see if you see any patterns or trends about your value. What have people said about you? What have they recognized you for? Sometimes other people see the best in us that we don't see for ourselves. So have you stopped to analyze what those things are? Right? Now, you have your SOAR stories, you got to package them. You got to put them into a resume of some kind. A resume is a living, breathing document. It never rests, even when you pursue active retirement. You always need a resume, right? Now, a resume shouldn't be a career history of yourself. It should be like a marketing brochure, a marketing slick, right? Headlines. Give me a snapshot, some insight as to what I'm going to get, right? So you have to think about, what's the return on investment that you're going to bring? What are the areas of expertise that you're offering? Because at the end of the day, as an employer, if I'm going to pay you 6 figures, I got to know what I'm paying for, right? And that's what your resume is going to do, is to introduce that. So what active verbs are you using to describe yourself? If you don't want to overstate your experience, what are the alternative sentence openers that you're using, right? How do you want to quantify and qualify your professional experiences? What metrics do you have that are going to demonstrate that value for me, right? If I'm thinking about a sales associate, for example, how would I know that this sales associate is good and I want them on my team?
Sell you the document.
Selling what?
They need to sell you the document.
They need to sell me the document. You're absolutely right. But what else would I look for if I didn't have a chance to interact with them? Yeah.
Consistently exceeded sales quotas.
Thank you. There's metrics behind that, right? What about customer satisfaction and surveys? Right? What about sales strategies that they rolled out, market penetration, those sorts of things? Those are buzzwords, those are keywords, right? They all play into the brand. Accomplishment stories, how you design your resume, what sort of a style you select. The style you select today may not work for you 2 years from now when you decide you want to do something different. So you don't have to stick to just one format of resume style. You have to be selective about what you think is going to be best for your transition and your career progression. Right? Now, in the resume, it's hard to see, but you'll see that there's some red boxes that are highlighted around some key things. Buzzwords, keywords, there's a tagline for this particular one, right? Driving excellence in customer service, fostering above and beyond mindset to maximize customer loyalty. Some of you presented the slogans, think differently, right? Make them an offer you can't refuse. There's these little taglines. Some of you may come up with a tagline for yourself. It could be a great witty way to introduce yourself or network. You could feature it at the top of your resume, as long as you do it professionally, all right? So there's buzzwords and keywords scattered throughout. In the body of the resume, your scope statement to highlight challenges, opportunities, what you did for the organization, and your bullet points are your accomplishment stories, those source stories, right? Then when you get to page 2, you're doing the same thing. You're saying, here's some additional relevant information that continues to support my brand, right? Because the summary section of your resume really is your brand statement. That's your opener. That's your 30-second opener to the resume. So now, what are you packaging in this resume that continues to support that value in that brand? What questions do you have so far? We're good? Processing? All right, continue on. Now, interviewing is also part of your brand strategy. So, the interview process is my opportunity to validate that what you put on paper is what's showing up today in person. Because I know there's some people that can write fabulous resumes and then they show up and I'm like, what just happened? This is not what I thought I was going to be interacting with, right? The interview is that opportunity to validate your brand, right? How are you showing up in terms of appearance? How are you communicating with me? How are you building a relationship with me? Is there a good sense of chemistry and synergy between us? Now, it could be a panel, it could be one-on-one. There's a whole variety of those, right? Now, you notice I put networking informational on there, too. Informational and networking are not technically part of the group of 6 interviews, right? Because interviews fall into the first 6 categories. But networking, in my opinion, is the equivalent of an interview. It just may not be taking place in a corporate setting. You never know who you're going to meet, when or where, and what they can do for you. It could be at a barbecue, it could be at the store, it could be online at the supermarket. I can't tell you how many connections I made online at the supermarket because some cashier was taking way too long, all right? And then it sparks conversation, and then business cards are exchanged, and these relationships still stand today. So I'm trying to drive home for you a level of self-awareness about your presence and who you're interacting with and how are you showing up every day in every interaction that you have. It's not just the interview setting as well. Okay? Now, I want to remind you, this is a friendly reminder, that you don't want to dominate the interview. If you really want to showcase your brand, the interview has to be a healthy exchange of information, right? When you go into, I'm going to use this example again, when you go in to buy a car, you don't just sit there and let the salesman blab at you all day, right? That's not what you want. You want to touch the car. You want to get inside. You want to play with the features. You want to ask questions. Now, in order for this salesman to make a sale, what's he doing? He's prodding you with questions. How much money do you want to spend? What color do you want? What kind of features do you need? How often do you drive? How long's your commute? Right? He's trying to gauge what he can sell you. You're trying to find a thing that meets your needs. And in the process of exchanging that information, you're going to hopefully find a happy medium. He walks away with the sale, but you walk away with the product that's going to better your life and suit your needs. There has to be alignment there. And that's what your brand has to do. Your brand has to be in alignment with the needs of the marketplace or the target audience, right? Yes, please.
You asked about not dominating the interview. Can everyone hear me? Speaking of dominating?
Yes.
One way to have it be interaction would be to get the brands of the people who are interviewing you, say there are 4 of them.
Yes.
What's the right balance? I get 10% of each of them and they get 75% of me?
Now, clarify something for me.
Sure.
What are you trying to achieve by picking on their brands? Are you using that as an opportunity to do an icebreaker, get to know them a little bit better? What are you hoping to achieve?
I want to build relationship for one thing.
Right.
I want to build an interactive conversation.
Right.
I work by associative memory.
Okay.
We all do, but I seem to do that a lot. So The more things that there are to talk about, the more interesting things that there are to talk about. And I also want to know a little bit about the company. Okay, so and the company is who works there. So here are 4 people who work there. So it's a great way for me to know, more about their culture by who they sent to see me.
Mm-hmm. So, maybe what I'll do is this. Let me clarify the statement about not dominating. By not dominating, I mean, don't try to steer the conversation in your direction. Because when you do that and you make me feel like I've lost control as an interviewer, I don't like that. And then my perception of you is, you're going to come to my department and do that to me, and then undermine me? Not happen, right? Now, there's nothing wrong with asking questions of the interviewer, right? Because it's always nice to show genuine interest, and, of course, you capitalize on the fact that people love to talk about themselves. And we hope that they talk so much that they reveal information that positions us better and allows us to know how we can sell ourselves and how we can position our brand. So by not dominating, I mean don't force the conversation in a particular direction because you feel the need to dump information on the interviewer. Allow them a certain amount of control, but do ask strategic questions along the way to get them to reveal so that you position yourself. Does that clarify a little bit?
So, so it's not a standard operating procedure, put it that way, to try to get a piece of the brand of the people who are interviewing you. Maybe, but not a standard operating procedure.
I think it's wise when you are preparing for an interview, if I'm understanding what you're asking. I think it is always wise to research who is interviewing you. Take a look at their LinkedIn profiles, because I notice, and I look at people that I'm interviewing, and they've hit my profile, and I'm like, good. I'm glad they did that. That tells me they're engaged, they're interested, they're doing their research, they're not just showing up. So there is a piece of doing that research and learning about their value, learning about their brand that is important, and that is part of the preparation process. So yes.
Okay. So it's preparation, not during the interview, is the bottom line.
As part of the preparation, but you're using that preparation to stage the interview and to position yourself for the interview, to be able to anticipate some things. Or if you see that things are not going in your direction and you realize you need to kind of lighten things up a little bit, you may be able to pinpoint a piece of information you learned about them from LinkedIn that will hopefully break down the defensive barriers of the interviewer. Get them to open up and lighten up a little bit. Because sometimes I think they go in with that mentality like, oh, I'm going to grill you, I'm going to get you. All right? And, they get a little overzealous, and then you kind of break them down a little bit, and then they come out loving you, and they don't know what they would do without you. That's what we hope is going to happen in Denver, right? But thank you for those questions. So, your brand online. Okay, we've talked about what it looks like in an interview, what it looks like on a resume, a 30-second elevator pitch, your value proposition matrix. But how are you advertising this online? Because it's got to be consistent there too. So let me just share some key facts with you to make my point. 88%, over 88% of employers are using social media to hire, right? 80% of them are looking at your Facebook. They are looking at your LinkedIn. They are looking at your Twitter. They are Googling you. I guarantee it, it's happening, right? New hires, 95% of new hires, through some form of networking, are getting sourced into positions, right? And then this last one, 90% do use some form of software or keyword searches to locate candidates. Now, I did some research earlier this week and I saw another figure, but because I couldn't remember where I saw this and what publication, I didn't put it on here. Over 80% of employers, or I should say, yes, over 80% of candidates get declined because of their social media profile.
Oh, man.
It's a very high number. That's not good. Which means you gotta check your privacy settings, and you have to be selective about what you want your digital footprint to look like. Okay, there's nothing wrong with Facebook, there's nothing wrong with Twitter, there's nothing wrong with YouTube. But how are they supporting your brand? Right? Do you need to use an alias if you want to use it for recreational purposes so that people can't find you who you really are? And then you use your legal name to position yourself on social media sites that do help advertise and support your brand. Right? So this is just a message about be thoughtful about where your brand fits in with some of these social media tools, and that the message has to be consistent. Okay? Yes, back there.
Do you have more specifics on? Do you have specifics on why that is such a high percentage that a candidate would be turned down or filtered based on their social media profile?
Yes. So it's the perceptions of their profiles, the perceptions that are created that influence their reputation, right? So if you go, believe it or not, some candidates that we've interviewed, and I'm talking about in other recruiter roles that I've had before my life with Lee Hecht, didn't lock down their profiles. And we saw all sorts of pictures. Now, I wasn't involved in this, but we're talking about other recruiters that were actually going into the profiles and saying they were drinking, they were doing this, there's half-naked pictures up there, there's this, there's that, right? That's scandalous to a company's brand if they're not behaving properly. Now, we can ethically debate whether or not somebody should be going into my social media profile. But until that is settled in a federal court, lock your profile down, right? If you put it out there, it's going to be consumed. So really, keep in mind that no matter how much of a high performer you are, let's take a look at that example of Lance Armstrong again, the Martha Stewart example back there. We had solid performance, solid products, solid reputation up until the reputation got tarnished, and then you don't feel so great about that person anymore. So if I go into a social media profile and I'm seeing something that makes me feel uncomfortable, I am then making assumptions. Now, whether they are grounded assumptions or not, it doesn't matter. I cannot control other people's perceptions of what they see. And so that's a big piece of the process, right? Employers don't want to get blindsided or surprised by drug use or alcohol use or something else, or people getting out of control and not behaving properly, right? Again, we're not saying that it's going to come into the workplace, but it's a very litigious society. You never know what's going to happen. Okay? All right. Now, developing relationships is very important. That's also a big piece of your brand. So you always have to be thinking about how are you interacting with people at every moment of the day, right? Particularly when you're thinking about communication. Email versus phone versus in-person, right? You have to think about those things. And that's actually an issue that a lot of corporations are experiencing now that there's 4 generations working in the workforce. You've got the traditionals and the boomers and half of the Gen Xers who are valuing in-person relationship contact, right? And then the other half of the new hires, the millennials, the Gen Ys, who really prefer to hide behind social media to drive their conversations. And there's this clash, and they're not realizing the impact that it's having on their brand, their reputation, how they're being perceived in the workplace. So my reason for putting this up there is, again, to drive self-awareness about what communication channels are you using, being selective about that, try to get away from email if you can, if you know that in interacting with that person you can get the answer faster, and you will have achieved some sort of relationship building in the process of that exchange as well. Any questions around that? All right, we're in the home stretch. So, opportunities to build your brand. I thought it would be healthy to put up some examples of how you are building your brand, because we may not even be aware that it's having an impact on our brand. Okay? Performing your job beyond expectations. It's not just performing your job if you're employed. Performing your job search beyond expectations is equally important. Because as you're searching, you're networking, you're looking through things, what is your sphere of influence around you saying, wow, they are really going after that job. They are consistently getting up, they are consistently networking, look at that resume, this is fantastic. This is somebody that's so talented. Why are they still in the marketplace?
Amen.
They should have landed already, all right? So think about that. As you are driving your job search, people around you are observing how you're navigating that job search because it is your full-time job, all right? When we look at communicating thoughts clearly and ideas in meetings, right? Whether you're networking, you're on the phone, in job search, formal meeting, talking to the board, how are you communicating? That is an immediate reflection on your brand. If we look at project deadlines, following through on commitments, right? Does this person execute? And when they execute, are they detailed and flawless in their execution? Does that make me feel good? Do I know that I can hand something over to them and I don't have to worry about that? I don't have to micromanage them. They're going to come back and they're going to deliver me that quality that I'm looking for. How good does that feel when your employer can think of you in that way, that you're performing and they don't have to come after you? That's part of your brand, right? Problem solving in the moment. I put that example up there because sometimes when you're problem solving, there's usually a fire that you're putting out. And when there's a fire, there's stress, there's anxiety, there's pressures, there's money on the table. So how are you managing how you're being perceived in that particular context? So how you manage conflict, those sorts of things, is a reflection of your brand. Are you cool, calm, collected? Okay? Acquiring technical acumen. I put that out there because we are all experts in what it is that we do, but it doesn't mean that we can't take that level of expertise to the level of mastery, right? So if you're a project manager and you have your PMP, there's always continuing education and credits that you have to take to keep that certification active. Same thing in HR, same thing in other professions. There is always something that we can learn. So when there's training opportunities put before you, conferences that you can attend, again, even as a job seeker, think about how those things add value to your brand collectively. Okay? Any questions about those activities so far? All right. Now, the SMART agenda. This is something that I had referred to earlier when we talked about the 5 Ps. In order for you to have good self-awareness about yourself, your brand, etc., you always need to be thinking in this framework, right? This is a strategic framework for how you manage your projects, your activities, your deliverables, your networking activities, etc. Before you pick up the phone, before you start, what do you have to do? Who's involved? Right? Because you have to know who your target audience is before you act or say or do anything. Before you put your resume in the hands of somebody, right? Who is it for? What should it look like? What are the benefits? Is it measurable? What is the outcome that you're hoping to obtain? Because when you know what outcome you're hoping to obtain, that's hopefully going to shape your actions and how you approach it, the attitude that you approach it with. The relevance, the value add. Are there any potential obstacles that could get in your way? Right? Resources. What sort of resources do you need to execute? And then lastly, what sort of a time frame? Is there a deadline? Is there a date by which this action needs to be done? Anytime I'm at work, I'm always thinking in this format, even when I put out an email. And I might not need all of the categories, but I'm always thinking about who's on the other end of this email. What do they need to know? How quickly do they need to know it? In what format am I going to present this so that the information is thoughtful to the person and I get the response that I'm looking for in the time frame that I need it? And you want to do this not just with your job search, but with your networking, when you're building relationships, even when you're gainfully employed at work. Anytime you're given an initiative, a project, a task, something that needs to be carried out, always be thinking in this framework so that you understand, how is this going to impact me if I don't do this well? How is it going to reflect on me, my team, my manager, my family, my friends, my network? This is really all about self-awareness, okay? Any questions around that? We're processing. All right, process on. Yes?
I'll take one if you'll allow it.
Yes.
So SMART is about communication.
SMART
that-
is not just about communication. I use communication as an example. But SMART is about thinking strategically about your actions before you take anything on.
Okay.
So that you're thinking about, the ultimate goal is you want to preserve your brand at all times. You want nothing to reflect poorly on you. But we also know that if we don't plan in advance, we might not get the outcome that we're looking for. So
Be intentional.
be intentional. Yes, thank you. That's exactly what it is. Be intentional. Okay? Your reputation and your performance at work, just in sum, really start thinking about who you are and how you present, how you reflect. And if you don't know, ask someone. Ask someone that you trust for feedback as to how you're coming across, how you're presenting, what your reputation is. Because without that validation, we will never know. I ask my manager all the time, hey, development feedback for me? Is there anything that I need to know? You heard me present in the staff meeting today. Did you feel like I was on target? Was my tonality in the right place? If that person is truly invested in me and we have a solid relationship, he can give me that feedback and I won't take any offense to it, right? Because we know that we need transparent and honest communications in order to progress as individuals, particularly when we're talking about the manager-direct report relationship. Make sense so far? So, best practices going forward, right? We're going to start wrapping this up, but best practices going forward, start thinking about how you want to either drive your job search, your career transition, or how you want to drive your advancement within an organization. These are best practices for doing that, right? Set performance goals with yourself, if you're a job seeker, or set performance goals with your manager. That first 90 days that you started a job, or if you haven't done it, start it today with that new manager that you've got. What are the two of you trying to achieve, right? Be on the same page. Learning and development objectives. We can always improve. We can always take our level of mastery from apprentice to mentor to subject matter expert. If there's training opportunities that you may not necessarily feel are relevant, you should always ask yourself, if presented with an opportunity, what skills am I strengthening or what new skills am I acquiring? And what could that potentially do for me in terms of my brand, my transition, and how I'm growing? Mentorship, right? Mentorship doesn't mean you have to have a one-stop shop for a mentor. You can have multiple people serving as mentors. You might have someone whom you admire in the area of communications and you leverage them as a mentor for being better in that area. You might have someone else that's really good at leadership and that's your mentor in that area. I have about 6 or 7 different people that I rely on when I'm challenged in a particular area and I select the person that is best suited to coach me on that, right? So think about who are you surrounding yourself with from an intellectual capital standpoint that is supporting and building your brand. Your written and verbal communication skills, I think we've already on that topic. You get the point. You have to be selective about how you're communicating to build relationships. Volunteerism, right? Networking, building your brand outside of a work environment. That's also very key as well. Right? Some of you may be able to check off the full list. Some of them may be checking off half. But think about how you'd like to incorporate some of those things going forward so that you're a little bit more well-rounded. Okay? Any questions around that so far? All right. So, in sum, this is what we've covered. The capability formula. I think it's just a very simple, succinct way of reminding yourself, what does my reputation look like today? Right? Ask for feedback if you do not know. Your performance. What has it been? How has it been measured? Are you reaching your targets? Are you exceeding expectations? Are you following through on your commitments? And then your network. Who is your sphere of influence? Who are you surrounding yourself with? All 3 of those things, right? As a job seeker, you need all 3 to advance your job search and land the job. And as someone who's trying to navigate a corporate environment or grow within an organization, you need all 3 to position yourself for other opportunities, if that's your goal. You do not get a second chance to make a first impression. Be authentic. When you have your brand, it doesn't mean you have to be fake. It doesn't mean you have to be something that you're not. It means that you have to identify with what's unique about you, and you have to understand how you would like to position that going forward. Because if you're not your authentic self, you're not going to be successful in the workplace. You're going to feel like you're in a forced situation, and that's not natural. So definitely be authentic. Think thoughtfully about your presence and how you're showing up. And that is it. Good. What questions do we have? Any information or anything like that that you have?
Just want to make sure, will the slides be on Meetup?
The slides?
That's really.
Are they
I can make
copyrighted?
them.
Are they?
I have to check on a few,
Okay.
because some of this material came out of LEHAC and some of it out of Capital One, so.
Because I couldn't keep up, it was tremendous.
No
So,
worries.
so as, if you do that, we'll post them on Meetup under the files. So.
You got it. Yes, please.
So, how much different do you think this is for someone who's had kind of a focused career, doing primarily the same function for most of their career, versus someone who is maybe changing careers and how their brand is perceived?
That's an excellent question. So I think the technique and the strategy behind that is what you've been relying on to date to carry your brand may have to change or be repackaged. So I would say for those of you making dramatic transitions, particularly if you've been in one line of work or field for an extensive amount of time, extract from your previous brand the transferable skills that are relevant and valuable in today's marketplace, and think about how you want to align those with what the needs are in the market, right? So you kind of have to do it simultaneously, and then you're able to package the two things together in order to drive that search. Does that help to clarify? All right. Well, I don't want to go over my time. Did you have a question?
Yes. One, what if your brand has been damaged through no fault of your own, but might involve legalities and other things that may come?
I'm afraid to ask.
Turn into a lawyer. Oh, don't worry, you'll know soon enough.
So the question is, what if your brand has been impacted by something that was not your fault,
Or false or unjust.
or false or unjust, possible legal action being involved, and so on and so forth, right? I've had several cases, believe it or not, in the practice office of that. Some folks that are coming out of federal prison and trying to reestablish themselves in the workforce. It's not an easy
Fortunately, I'm not there
transition.
yet.
Yeah, I'm afraid we don't want that, right? I think honesty and integrity are number one. Okay? And I think that in the same way that you have to, you know that answer, why are you leaving your organization? Why did you leave? What are you doing now? What have you been doing with your time? You have to have a good exit statement put together. If there's legalities involved, then I would actually consult with an attorney to figure out what sort of an exit statement could you put together thoughtfully, because they are a master of those types of statements, right? You might want to look at somebody in your network who does PR, right? An Olivia Pope in your network, right? Who could help you out with some of that stuff.
I have a good attorney. He'll help me with the next
Yeah.
stage.
You know, when it comes to the legal piece, I would definitely consult with them, but you know, it's always a gamble. If you're, I've seen it happen in both ways, where you can give a diplomatic statement, the employer doesn't really care, they know it was out of your control, they're able to do the research and then just keep moving forward. But I've seen it backfire recently with a candidate who kind of glazed over it lightly. They learned the details of what it was, and it's not that they cared so much what happened, it was the fact that they felt deceived.
Right.
And they felt that he wasn't forthcoming with the information, and they actually rescinded the offer. So
Right.
it's a tricky one that I don't think I have a perfect answer for you. We can certainly debate it offline if you would like, because I know that there's more details that would influence the answer. But transparency is important. honesty is important, and putting an exit statement together. And if there's any supporting documentation that you can provide the employer in advance. For example, if you have references from that organization, even though there's legal issues, there may still be executives or managers who can provide a solid reference to say, in light of whatever's been happening, this person is a solid performer. And I've had candidates present that and do it up front immediately with the recruiter.
Past supervisors,
Past supervisors, et cetera. Any documentation that you can provide up front as an offensive is better than you being on the defensive when you're not transparent with the information.
it's very helpful, and I appreciate your answer.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Yes?
It strikes me in that kind of a situation, the character aspects of your reputation
Yeah.
far outweigh your skills.
You're absolutely right. Your character is going to be key. Because at the end of the day, remember that an employer, when they're evaluating and analyzing you, especially in an interview situation, they're trying to predict how would you react, perform, if you were at their organization and faced with similar circumstances. So what you do today validates for them who you will be with them in the future. You're absolutely right. It is a reflection of character. Thank you for bringing that up. Over here, yes.
Yes, I have a question about the Twitter. I think a lot of us are more
Is it
mature.
like coming to you?
I don't need. A lot of us are very mature here, and I don't Twitter. Is that a negative?
No, because I don't Twitter either.
I don't tweet. Okay, excuse me, I don't tweet. That's how uncool I am.
We're on the same page.
Thank you. So would that almost be a bonus? They can look you up if there's nothing there.
Well, listen, I'll tell you what. I actually have a Twitter profile, but you won't be able to find me because it's an alias.
Yeah.
Right? So, yeah, I just created a name. Now, I also have a professional Twitter account that is under my legal name. I read, but I do not write. Right? So, I should say, I read, but I don't tweet. So, Twitter can be a very impactful tool for receiving and gathering information, but it does not obligate you to produce or publish anything. Right? So Twitter won't kill you if you're using it in the right way. So I use Twitter to subscribe to LHH, to subscribe to Anderson Cooper, to The Economist, and to publications that will add value to who I am as a professional. And you can see who it is that I'm following. But again, I've never tweeted, ever. I've had my account for maybe 3 years now. I haven't put a single tweet out. It's just for information gathering.
Can you maximize your privacy settings on it?
There's all sorts of privacy settings that are consistently changing, so yeah, you can maximize privacy on it. Yep. Did I miss a question? Did you have one?
Well, it's good to just add that I don't tweet either. And a lot of my friends have actually moved back away from Twitter because it actually is not as secure. I've had too many friends, and myself included, that have had their Twitter account hacked. So Twitter's one of those things that if you are going to use it, make sure that you are logging in and making sure that you are using it. Because if you have one and you don't use it, there's a good chance that somebody else will use it for you.
I think the other piece about security that I don't know if you guys realize, when you know how now when you log into something, it says, do you want to stay logged in?
Yes.
That is ultimately what is making you a prime target for being hacked. No matter what computer you're on, the phone, etc., even on my personal cell phone, I log out of everything that I'm using completely, particularly in public places. That's ultimately what makes you prone to hackers and things like that, because they see that the account is there and it's active. Your wireless on your laptops, when you're not using your wireless, turn it off. Right? Those are simple things that they don't tell us about. But my best friend is actually a certified ethical hacker. And he's got this other unique title that I won't use either. But he's the one that was reminding me of those things. These are the very, very simple things that will reduce your exposure to hacking and unethical internet behavior. Yes, back there.
I found Twitter very helpful in
with the job search process.
Yes.
They have a professional profile. I follow companies that I'm interested in. There are job opportunities in the area that you are looking for.
Yes.
Follow recruiters. You can maybe establish, one-to-one communication.
That is correct.
And I don't Twitter, but I don't tweet. But I comment on some, or putting a star. I prefer some tweets that I read. So kind of it's a professional.
Absolutely.
You don't do things, personally.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's alternative activities that you can do. In LinkedIn, you can just hit like. In Facebook, you can just click like. The great thing about some of these technologies and social media is that they're giving you so many more options today to be active in it without exposing yourself or, what have you. So, great. All right, my friends, thank you.
I didn't hear what you were saying about the books.
Well, thank you guys, and thank Pascale for a wonderful presentation. Edie is not here. If I could take her place and just join us in a short prayer. If I can get you to stand and bow your heads. Lord, thank you for this wonderful opportunity tonight to hear words of wisdom, and we're thankful for the time that Pascale has carved out of her busy schedule to be with us, and her constant focus on coming here each month and being part of our volunteer group and sharing her wisdom. We appreciate the people that came in this doors, the people that came to support the volunteers, our photographer out this evening, and the wonderful pictures that he's going to take of people. We ask as we go forward this week, Lord, you'll watch over us and guide us, and maybe let us hear your voice in our search. Sometimes these searches can be lonely places, but with the new advice we have, let us put it to work, and let us hear your voice as we go this week, Lord, and let us come back next week energized with the progress we've made and excited about the opportunities that lie ahead. In your Son's name we pray. Amen.